Over the course of my time making Destiny content, I've had my fair share of criticisms. There have been times where people in the community are clearly upset, and I've volunteered as tribute, so to speak, to eternally get blacklisted by Bungie. There's also been times where the community has been in love with Destiny, and I've come in to essentially ruin the fun for all you people. With all that said, the things I'm about to say in this video will probably surprise you. I don't make Destiny content nearly as often as I used to, but know that when there's drama, I'm still close by. Seemingly out of nowhere, people are upset with Destiny 2. I saw some videos pop up on my homepage a few weeks ago and didn't think much of it. But then I saw the news articles and even comments in my videos from you guys mentioning how Destiny is essentially dying. I hadn't played Destiny 2 since Cyberpunk came out, so I was mostly in the dark regarding many of these issues. Because of that, I understand I'll have a slightly different perspective than other YouTubers who religiously play this game. Still, in my opinion matters. But at the end of the day, it's just my opinion. So you can disagree with some of the things I'm about to say, and that's totally fine. We're all friends here. We all want Destiny to be a good game. So let's talk about what's going on with Destiny 2. Now, I never made a video reviewing Beyond Light, despite fully intending to, so we're going to start there and move our way forward into endgame content, the season pass, sunsetting, and Bungie's response to all of this. If you don't want to hear me talk about Beyond Light, then you can use the timestamps to skip ahead. But just know that doing so would severely hurt my feelings. You've been warned, people. When I look at Beyond Light, I pile in with many other Destiny expansions. I liked it, I think it was good, but it's not some masterpiece that will be considered for the greatest game of all time. It's a good expansion overall, but it's not like Destiny 2 is the best thing since sliced bread. What is that?
It's bread.
But why is it in that shape?
It's because it's sliced bread.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. Hey, have you heard of Destiny 2?
What?
You know, like Destiny.
No.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
I used to be extremely passionate when it came to Destiny's story, and while I still care about the narrative of Destiny, I definitely don't care about it nearly as much as I used to. Is Beyond Light's story incredibly formulaic? Yes. Does it follow the exact format of the previous DLC's campaign? You bet your bottom dollar it does. However, I've come to accept that the story of Destiny is less about your guardian and more about the universe you're living in. Also, a lot of Destiny's story content doesn't come from the main campaign, and while that can be frustrating to some players, I appreciate Bungie extending the narrative into endgame activities. The plotlines involving Stasis and the Stranger were interesting to me, even if the quests themselves were kind of repetitive. Call me crazy, but I don't consider doing the same Lost Sector 3 times as exciting new content. Overall though, the story gets the job done. I could poke holes in it, but at the end of the day, it interested me enough to want to see what happens next. And in a game that's primarily about the gameplay and cooperative elements and loot, that's enough for me. Plus, they brought the Stranger back and actually revealed her backstory in a well-integrated way. So that was cool. Took them like 6 years, but they finally did it. Stasis was added to the game, and in PvE, it's freaking awesome. I don't remember exactly when The Taken King came out, but thank God we finally have new powers to play around with. And bonus points for integrating it into the overall Destiny universe narrative. I don't use all 3 characters in Destiny 2 like I did in Destiny 1, but I'm sure you Titans and Warlocks out there, you like your Stasis powers too. From what I've seen, it seems like people have big problems with Stasis in PvP though, so much so that they wish Bungie didn't implement Stasis into the sandbox before playtesting it more. Which I understand. I mean, I lived through those Felwinter's Lie, Thorn, constantly up your bumhole, firebolt grenade days. Oh boy, now I'm having flashbacks. I'm not a big PvP guy myself. I know there's a big balancing act between PvE and PvP players in Destiny. There always has, always will be. I want the game to be fair, because I do understand many players out there take PvP seriously, especially in Trials of Osiris or any competitive play. However, I do sit in the boat of people who would prefer an unbalanced fun game over a balanced game where no piece of gear really stands out as special or exceptionally powerful. Other games within the looter genre, such as Outriders, aren't including PvP at all to ensure they can go crazy with weapons and abilities. I definitely think Bungie's issues with balancing PvE and PvP over the years is why other developers are choosing to do this. That might seem like an easy decision for these other studios, but in doing so, they're missing out on a particular player base. While I think the mod system in Destiny is cool, I'm sure features like this only make the game harder to balance. For the record, I'd be okay if Bungie spent a little less time balancing and tuning everything all the time if it meant we can get some more meaningful content to play. I can make a whole video on that alone. Next up is the loot, which I always want to pronounce as loot with an EW instead of a double O. Not to be confused with flute, which is spelled UTE. Man, English is a weird language. Loot is something I know people were upset about right away because in a previous Beyond Light video, I said literally one sentence about the progression being good, and like hundreds of you made sure I knew it actually sucks. That's the internet for you people. If I'm being honest, and just hear me out, because this might be a hot take, I think the loot has always sucked in Destiny 2, with Recluse as the exception. Destiny 1 had good loot, but Destiny's 2 loot, with a few exceptions, is like Dragon's Breath. You can buff it all you want, and at times it can be cool, but it's still not Gjallarhorn. I understand it was overpowered, but nothing to this day has replaced the feeling I would get from seeing an arc in Solar Burn Nightfall Strike and getting to whip out my Fatebringer Black Hammer and Gjallarhorn. Not even close. 1, because they're awesome, and 2, because they're awesome. I can still remember the circumstances where I earned my Hawkmoon in Destiny 1, along with a handful of other weapons. I can't say the same for pretty much anything in Destiny 2. Exotics, and especially legendaries, drop way too often now in my opinion, to the point where I'm desensitized to it. And I don't even play the game that much. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't like how your effectiveness in Destiny all comes from one number, that being your power level. The biggest issue I have with power levels in Destiny is the fact that it's not called light level anymore. If Bungie wants to change how leveling works, then that's fine. But personally, I'm just not super passionate about this one, if I'm being honest. But I recognize many of you out there probably are, and will write novels in the comments about it. The last thing I want to discuss in regard to Beyond Light is Europa. As always, Destiny's art, music, and VFX teams do incredible work. This critique has more to do with the design and less with the art itself. But I feel like Destiny's worlds are pretty barren, all things considered. I understand these examples weren't the most elaborate things ever, but I remember the Dreadnought from the Taken King would have little secrets to find, and by secrets I don't just mean collectibles around the map, I'm referring to platforms you can't see unless you scan the area with your ghost, or a chest that kills you if you try opening it without a certain buff. Just little extra things to find and make the world feel like it actually has something to be discovered in it. The mere 2 fast travel points are also very close together, I get. It's because there's the Stranger and Varix, but making the player spend a ton of time riding their Sparrow to these same locations on the map over and over again, it's not fun. Unlike many modern games, Destiny is consistently a stable experience. While Bungie may delay their content at times, it's always delivered free from game-breaking bugs and glitches. These days, especially considering the fact that Beyond Light was developed remotely, is something to mention. With all that out of the way, we can move on to the endgame and current controversy surrounding the game. From my understanding, the people of Destiny are mostly upset with 2 big things: the content vault and sunsetting, then the endgame, but that always happens. So let's begin with the content vault. Earlier this year, Bungie realized that the average player's hard drive isn't 15 terabytes, so they decided to remove a lot of content from Destiny 2. This wasn't at all surprising to me. Over a year ago, I made videos talking about how within the next few years, Bungie is either going to have to develop Destiny 3 or remove a bunch of stuff from the current game, mostly because of these kinds of hardware limitations. They chose to stick with Destiny 2, so this is the price we as players have had to pay. Now I'm actually going to play devil's advocate here for a second and give Bungie the benefit of the doubt. To my understanding, Bungie removed a ton of content from the game in order to give them enough space to add new content back in the years to come. Removing a lot of content does suck initially, but if they removed only a little bit, then they'd have to remove stuff every time they tried to add anything, which they might be doing anyway, and you guys let me know. But like I said, I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt here. And on top of that, the bigger your game is, just in general, the slower it's going to take to not only run, but also to develop and compile and all of that. So while I agree getting a lot of content taken away sucks, I do understand in concept why they did this and why they had to do this, mostly just on a technical level. At the same time, having to do the same strikes over and over again each year gets really boring. The endgame this year is barely any different content-wise from that of last year's, and the season pass being immediately shoved down our throats asking for another $30 or so on top of the price of Beyond Light doesn't make people feel any better, especially if that season pass doesn't offer anything of value or true value in terms of its content and rewards. To my knowledge, people are mostly disappointed with Season of the Hunt because instead of adding activities with real substance, it just made players dive back into those stale core playlists. And it also failed to provide new weapons and gear to chase. The endgame as a whole just lacks incentive. That's where this whole dilemma gets tricky because, and I'm gonna go out on a limb here, it doesn't seem like the things Bungie is doing are necessarily what's making people upset. Instead, it's the way they're choosing to do those things. They're removing content, fine, but they're making the game more repetitive and less rewarding than potentially ever. And I think the same can be said for sunsetting. Once again, if Bungie wants to sunset weapons and make us leave them in the past, fine. Goodbye, Recluse. You were the only gun I liked in this game. But whatever, there's plenty of fish in the sea. Unless that fish is named Gallahorn, then there's only one of you. Man, it saddens me so many of you probably don't even know what Gallahorn is. Probably think I'm speaking gibberish over here. In concept, I don't have an issue with sunsetting. I get why they wanted to make it a thing. I can make the argument that the player should decide which weapons they want to use and which weapons they want to spend their materials on to infuse. Wow, that rhymed. But I'll hold my tongue. You can get rid of the things I earned and force me to replace them. However, Bungie hasn't been able to add anything to really replace some of those good weapons. They haven't thought of cool and creative ways to introduce a new meta. They're making their player base grind for weapons that won't be powerful enough to use in the next big content release, making the grind for them pointless. And on top of that, they're adding pre-existing weapons back into the game and essentially forcing players to grind for those same weapons all over again. And even if they do that, the role they get probably won't be as good as the role they already have. Sunsetting is causing more problems than it's fixing, so I understand the concern there. Overall though, I still think Destiny is a good game, and this leads me to the main thing I actually wanted to talk about in this video. It took a while, but we got here. So thanks for making it this far. If you did, type, I don't know, pineapple in the comments and see if we can confuse those less dedicated folk. This isn't exactly super high level thinking, but art in general is extremely subjective. Despite the masses' popular opinion, there are always going to be people out there that hate things the world says are good and love things the world says sucks balls. It's just an unavoidable fact of life. There have been times where I have loved Destiny. I was addicted to playing it, but I knew that the game wasn't perfect and I always had my fair share of complaints. And hypothetically, even if it was perfect in my eyes, that doesn't mean it was perfect in everyone else's eyes too. For example, I miss old Nightfall strikes and daily missions along the side of the orbit map. Bungie changed the system a long time ago now, and I don't like Nightfall strikes anymore. I don't like the point system they have going on there. But I'm just one player out of millions. And while your favorite Destiny YouTuber or streamer typically voices the common feelings from the community, they too are just one Destiny player. Destiny is a game that is always going to be flawed to some degree due to the way in which it was designed. I can't think of any other game that tries to reach as many audiences as Destiny does. Destiny tries to be about 6 different genres of games all at the same time, trying to cater towards and please all of those audiences at once. Destiny tries to be a looter with constant progression and powerful loot. It has relatively complex raids involving cooperation from 6 players. It also has very casual bounties and strike missions to do. It tries to cater towards casual PvP players and competitive players alike. It even tries to cater towards people who like a mix of both with modes like Gambit. Some Destiny players want to pump hundreds of hours into the game, speccing out their character and building it to their liking. Others want a simple, straightforward, and casual shoot aliens in the face experience. Some players like Destiny for a month or two, feel like they did everything, and then put it down for a year. Others want to have enough content to constantly invest into the game year-round. No game is going to be perfect at whatever it tries to do, and Destiny will never be where the community wants it to be because everyone has their own idea of what a perfect Destiny would look like. I agree with all of the frustrations Destiny players have right now. Bungie should try to work out the issues they've created because these are systems they chose to implement into their game, and so they should work as intended. But at the same time, fixing one problem is more than likely going to lead to another problem. If you make the game more casual, the hardcore players will be upset. We saw this with the launch of Destiny 2. If you make the game too hardcore, casual players will become overwhelmed. If you create insane powers like Stasis, the Crucible suffers. If you nerf everything powerful into the ground, you end up with a very bland ecosystem. This is all Bungie has done for the past 7 years, lean the game back and forth to cater towards different player bases. adding new content to that, no matter how good it is, always complicates that system. This video is not just some big, don't like it, play a different game comment. Seeing Destiny for what it is has allowed me to enjoy it a lot more. And that's not meant to discredit the feelings many people have right now. I'm just saying I've been able to appreciate all of the many things Destiny does extremely well. Destiny is far better, in my opinion, than any other game in its looter shooter genre. Games these days like Anthem, what I just made a video about, try to be like Destiny because it's a good video game. I'm not saying that the issues with Destiny are things people should just ignore, but just because Destiny has problems doesn't mean it sucks. The Destiny community is very passionate, and I am that way as well. I understand it all comes from a place of wanting the game to be amazing. But Beyond Light was created remotely. That in and of itself is an amazing feat. Many other games don't release at the quality Destiny 2 is at, with an in-person studio. And I don't like the season price pass. I don't like sunsetting. I understand why people don't think Bungie is listening to them right now. I get that the endgame is not very rewarding, and I'm going to reiterate that again. Bungie should continually try to make the game better. I just don't want to lean into the realm of having unrealistic expectations and just always trying to find something wrong with the game. If Bungie wants the game to change drastically, if having just more Destiny isn't enough anymore, then by all means go do that. I'm just saying with how Destiny's built, fixing the game for you might ruin the game for someone else. There's a certain level of realism here, knowing that fixing sunsetting or whatever the current problem is isn't going to make the game perfect. If you look at the history of Destiny, a different problem will just grow back in its place. This video isn't meant to sound pessimistic, and it isn't trying to tell you to just accept Destiny for the eternally flawed game it is. I'm trying to give you guys a different perspective and some food for thought. That's all. We as Destiny players are essentially married to this game. For those of you who are married or have been in a serious relationship, you should understand me when I say you can love someone fully knowing they're never going to be perfect and will make you angry sometimes. I don't know what's next for Destiny. Like I said, I kind of play the game hardcore for like a couple of months whenever a new piece of significant content comes out. Then I move on to other things. I don't really screw around with the season pass. But we will just have to wait and see. If you guys enjoyed the video, please leave me a like rating. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll be back next week, same day, same time. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.